if you have the space problem, just solve the space problem, and then you will get this one. If you still remember, we want to calculate how much money that we can get this on this transaction. So what is this transaction? This transaction was from this table. So we have the customer 1, he bought ice cream 1, but snack 0, beverage 0, and cookies 0. Customer 2, he bought snack 1, 0, 0, 0 for the remaining items, and so on. And we know that the ice cream price is 1,500, the snack price is 2,500, the beverage price is 1,250, and the cookies price is 2,000. Then we know that this is index 0, index 1, index 2, index 3. Then if we have a number here, we can multiply with the price in index 0, index 1, index 2, and index 3. So this is the list, and this is the two-dimensional list. Based on this one, we can create the code. This is the two-dimensional list. This is the price. And then for every of this transaction, so we want to calculate the total. So total is how much money that we can get from all those purchases. It means I would like to multiply 1 with 1,500 and then 1 with 2,500 because this is the second item, and then this is the third item, which is 1,250, and this one is the third item and the fourth item. So we will do the total equals to the total plus the item multiplied by the price of the item choose. Okay, you can look at this one. Yeah, this one is the good. Then the total is 8,500. Okay. Now I would like to continue to the next section. It is about the object-oriented programming. So the content of this slide will be about what is object-oriented. So what is object? And we are going to learn about classes and fields. And we are going to learn about the object behavior, and we are going to learn about the object constructor. So what are they? Let's learn one by one. We are going to learn about class. Okay, what is class? And later we will learn about what is fields. If you still remember, in the multi-dimensional list, in two-dimensional list, we have a file of cities. So we have X, we have Y. So let's suppose this is the X, and this is dy. Okay. And I would like to input the cities. Let's assume that I would like to input 6 cities. Then there will be 6 cities. Let's say I input 5 and 2. So it means x equals to 5 and y equals to 2. The next city is 3, 5. So x equals to 3 and y equals to 5, and so on. So we have 6 cities, and then I would like to put the city center. Let's assume the city center is 2.2. So the city center is here. Write a program to calculate the distance between a point and the center. So I want to know what is the distance between this point to the center. I want to know the distance between this point to the center. I want to know this point to the center, this point to the center, this point to the center, and this point to the center. We can use the formula that we learned in the previous slide with the x2 minus x1 power of 2 plus y2 minus y1 power of 2, and then we do the square root. Now, how can we make this eigenvalue? The idea of the two-dimensionalist, okay, we still remember the two-dimensionalist. We can make a kind of table like this, but this table is a form of multi-dimensionalist. Let's say we have 5, 2. This is the point 1. And then we have 3, 5. This is point 2. And then this is 4, 4. This is the point 3, and so on. Or another way to deal with this one, we can also use a list, but for every of this item, let's say for this x, we have a list. For this y, we have another list. For example, for x index 0, it is 5. For y index 0, it is 2. Is it possible? For x index 1, it is 3. For y index 1, it is 5. Is it possible? Yes, of course, it is possible. Okay, you can define like this one. You can define in two-dimensional list. You can define also in a list. Okay. But I can say that this is a poor style. You can use, for example, city count. Then you input how many cities that you want to input. You put the x as one of the list. You put y as another empty list. And then for every point, you append. Okay, so x, when the index is 0, it is 5. So you input. When y is in the index of 0, then we input another number, and so on. Of course, this is good. This is correct. But we call this is poor style. So parallel arrays. So this kind of arrays, we call it parallel arrays. So the x index 0, y index 0. it is parallel. X index 1 and Y index 1. This is also a parallel. If you have the X index 0, 5, and then X index 1, 2, it is also possible. But you need to know that this is not flexible because you only have two size, X and Y. When you have this kind of problems, it is considered poor style when you use list. So there is an alternative solution. We can use a kind of object. So what is object? So this kind of problem will be easier to solve if there were such a thing as a point object. So a point will store a city X or Y, and its point will have its own property. So the overall program will be shorter and thinner. Okay, so let's look at the detail. If we use list, this point can be, let's say I have an X 0 and then Y 0. Or let's say we have P as a point, then we can have P of index 0 and P of index 0, it represents is X. If we have P of index 0 and index 1, this represents is Y. So this one is too complicated later when you want to have many behavior, or we call it the properties. So we can say that this is an object. A point 1 is an object, so we call object number 1. The point 2 is another object, or we call this is object number 2. The point number 3 is another object, so this is object number 3. Then we can make a class. What is a class? A class is a program entity that represent either a program or module. So a program, when you do with your team project, you will make a program. Or we can say it is a template for a new type of object. For example, I have a student class. So it means the object will be students. If I have cars class, then the object will be every car. If I have point class, then the object will be point of the cities. So for example, if the object is student, then I know that the student number 1 is, we have the information about name and we have the information about age. Then the name is Park and the age is 20, for example. So I have the second object, Lee, and the age is 19. And I have the next object, number 3, the name is Kim and the age is 21. If the class is about car, then the first object, the object number 1 is the car and the name, for example, pens, and the year, for example, 2023. The object number 2 of the car is BMW, and then we have the year 2024. And the object number 3 is Audi, and the year is 2023. If I have the point class, then the object number one will be a point, and the attribute or the column is x and y. The x equals to 5 and the y equals to 2 for the point object 1. For the point object number 2, the x is 3 and y is 5. The point object number 3, the point of x is 4 and the point of y is 4. Okay. So it means every class will have different properties, and it will be easier if we can create with the object-oriented programming. So we are going to focus on this one, a template for new types of objects. For this example, I would like to focus on the point class. So this point is a template for creating point objects. So the point 1, point 2, point 3, this is the object. And when we do with this kind of object, okay, it means an object is an entity that combines state and behavior. Okay, so we will learn what is a state and what is behavior. So we call this is object-oriented programming, or usually we call it OOP. Okay. So it is programs that perform their behavior as interaction between objects. So there will be objects and we want to do something. For example, I want to calculate the point 1 and the point 2. Then there is an interaction between one object and another object, and so on. So we call, if I have a student class, so we have 3 objects. We call it, this is the object instance. If I have point class, if I have 1, 2, 3 points, so this is the object instance. Okay. When we do with this object-oriented programming, we will make a class diagram. So we learn what the class. So a class, it can be anything. It can be an entity. It can represent student. So if the class student means it has the data about students. If the class is about car, then we have the data about car. If the class is about point, then we will have data about point. So the point class can be shown using a class diagram. So this is a class diagram. The first part, we call it the class name. So this is the class name, point. The next, we call it fields or data members. So both of the definition are the same. In this case, we have 2 data, or we have 2 fields. The first is X and the other is Y. Okay, so we know from the table, we have X and we have Y. Then we can represent it in the data members or in the fields. The next, we call it methods or behaviors. So the behaviors, it can be anything. Okay. So we will learn one by one later. For example, this is a constructor. This is to set a point with 2 parameters, X and y. This is a method, translate, or we call this is a behavior of translate with two parameters. And this is a distance method with one object. So we define a type of objects named point. The point is the class name. And then each point object will contain X or Y data. We call it fields or data members. So we have X and Y. And then each point will contain behavior. We call it methods. So this is the collection of methods. So this is the detailed explanation. In the point class, this is the class diagram. We have the data. The data in the each point object, we have X and Y. We call it, this is the field name. And X represent the points X coordinate and the Y represent the points Y coordinate. So this X and Y represent this description. What about the methods? So the methods here, this is the description. So point X comma Y, it is a constructor. So we will learn about the constructor later. It is to initialize the new object. And then this is a method, set location. It means we are going to set the point X and Y to the given values. Translate the X dy. It means we are going to adjust the point X and Y by the given amounts. And distance P. So P means a point. So how far away the point is from point P. So that's how to describe the methods. So we are going to create this in the Python. So we need to understand the point object instance. So the point object instance means whenever we have a point, let's say we have P1 and the P1 is 5 for the X and -2 for the Y. Then this is an object instance. Or sometimes we can say it is object only, or in some literatures they call it object instance. It is created by a constructor. And then we have another point, which is point number 2. So again, this will be created by a constructor. And if you look at this one, point without any numbers. So the default value is 0 and 0. Then P2 is a point and the default value is X equals 0 and Y equals to 0. And then we have point 4, 4. So it is to indicate that X is 4 and Y is 4. And it's also created by a constructor. So we have 3 instances because we have 3 instances. Or sometimes we have 3 object instances. We have P1, P2, and P3. So in detail, we have a point class, and then we have the point object 1. The point object 1, which is 5 for the X and -2 for the Y. So this point object 1 will have the behavior for all the methods. So the point object 1 can use the set location. Point object 1 can use translate. Point object 1 can use distance. When we create the object 2, so the object 2 is x equals to 0 and y equals to 0. Object number 2 also can do the set location, can do the translate, and can do the distance. The same with the other objects. Point object number 3 has the x equals to 4, y equals to 4, and the behavior also contain all the behaviors based on the class diagram. So the class blueprint describes how to create the objects, and each object contains its own data and method. So we can get this behavior. This was from the class diagram. We have set location, we have translate, and we have distance. Okay. So that's the introduction about the class. Now let's try to do one by one. In this section, we are going to learn about what is fields. To simplify the class, let's create only one class, which is point, and then let's have only two data members. Okay. So I do not want to make methods, so let's just focus on the fields. So how can we create this one in the Python? So the file in the Python will be something like this one. Class, we want to define the class name, which is point. How do we know that the name is point? Point is from the class name. So X is from this data, and Y is from this data. And because we want to have X as integer and we want to have Y as integer, so let's just make the initial value. Let's put 0. Because if you do not have any numbers, okay, X and Y, if you just define X and Y, what happens? Python cannot recognize what is X and what is the data type of Y. Then Python can think that this can be string, it can be integer, it can be float. So it is not good for making the class. It is better to define a number. Let's say if you want to put integer, then you can put 0. If you want to put float, what is the value? Float is number without, float is a number with comma. So you can define X equal to 0.0. Then Python know that this variable will be. What about if I want to define a string? If you want to define a string, then let's say I have variable X. So we can put the quote with empty. Then Python know that this variable will be a string. Okay. So that's how we can initialize the variable. Now let's just initialize with 0 as for the integer. And Y is also start with 0. So point objects do not contain any behavior yet. Okay, let's make in the pie chart. Let me make a new directory, chapter 08. So you need to follow this step by step. If you don't follow this step by step, I think you will miss the next section because I will do slowly from the starting point. And if you miss one of the steps, then there might be errors. Okay. So let's create a file point. Okay. Now I would like to make a new file in the chapter 08. Let's make a new Python file, point. So point is a Python file and the file name will be point.py. Then I can just copy and paste this one. Hopefully no problem. Okay, that is no problem. So we have a class and the name of the class is point and we need to follow with column. Okay, the same with the function. If you make a function, let's say you want to make a function name, then you need to follow with the column. Okay. So now we want to make a class x equals to 0 and y equals to 0. So to create a new object, we need to create a client program which has a main function. So let's create a test file. We call it test point. So let's do one by one. I would like to make a new file and the file name will be testpoint.py. So what is this test point? So I give you the code here, but let me type one more time for you. So first we are going to get the file from point, import point. It means I would like to get the point class from the point.py. Okay, so I would like to get the point class from point.py. And then let's create a function which is main. In this case, I would like to have a new object p1 and this object is using the class from point. So this object p1 will be created based on the class point. Now let's make it empty in the parentheses. It means this is just an object and the object I would like to print p1.x and then I want to print p1.y. So let me just call the main function. What you get is 0 and 0. Why? When we create this object, the point contains two data, which is x and y, and x is 0 and y is 0. So we can access the p1.x dot represent something to do with the information from the class point. In this case, I have one data member which is x, and I have another data member which is y. Then the result is 0 and 0. This is a variable. So we can change this variable the same as what we did on the common variable. For example, I want to have p1.x equals to 3. And then I have p1.y equals to 4. So it is the same with the variable. And then I want to print, let's say I want to print the p1.x and I want to print p1.y. Then the original value is 0, 0. When we create the object p1, originally it is 0 and 0. We change x from the object p1 equals to 3. And we change y from the object p1 equals to 4. Then we have the p1.x equals to 3 and p1.y equals to 4. Okay. Okay, so this is the result. We have the point.py, which is a class, and there are two data, which is x and y, and we have a test point. So the test point means we want to call this class and we want to do something is on the class. So the result is 0 and 0 for the first one, and the next one we have the result as 3 and 4. So maybe this one is 0 and 0. This one is 3 and 4. Okay. So this one is 0 and 0 and 3 and 4. So this, as you already saw on the example, we want to import the point class from the point.py. And then this statement is to create an object instance p1. And yeah, this will be created in Python. After this is created, so we want to assign value 3 into the field x. So we will assign 3 into the field x. We want to assign 4 to the field y. So 4 will be assigned in the y. Now, let's do something with mathematical formula. I have test point 02. Okay, I will do this one. Let's make a new file, test point 02. So in this case, I have p1, which is an object from point, and I would like to define p1.x equals to 2. So what is the result of this one? X equals to 2 and y equals to 0, because there is no assignment to the variable y. Now we want to create another object, p2. p2 is an object from point, and the variable y is 4. And the variable y will be multiplied by 3. And the variable x of the object p2 will be added by 1. So what is the result of this one? p2.x equals to 1. p2.y equals to 4 multiplied by 3. then the result is 12. So let's see. If I run this, then the result is 2, 0, 1, and 12. Sorry, this is also mystical. This is should be 2. Okay. This is 2, 0, 1, and 12. Then we have the field. What does it mean by field? Field is a variable inside an object that is part of its state. So we call this is a kind of state. So each object has its own copy of its field. So if I have P1, then the P1 has their own copy. If I have P2, I have another copy. If I have P3, so it is also another object which have another copy of the field. So we can do something to access or modify. If we want to access it, then we can just call variable.field. So if we call P1 equals to point, then P1.x equals to 2. P1.x is just to access. So this is to access and this is to modify. Then you can understand the summary. We have a class, then we have a client. It means a point.py is not by itself a runnable program. So you cannot run this one. In order to run this class, you need to have another client program. Okay, because this is a client program. And the client program will create the object. For example, P1 equals to point. Then we assign x equals to 7, y equals to 2. Then the result will be like this one. If I have P2 as also a point, so we have x equals to 4, y equals to 3. Then the result will be something like this one. Okay. Let me stop here. Let's have a break. I will continue after the break.